All right, Anne, thanks so much for being on this podcast. I appreciate it. First off, just tell the audience a little bit about yourself and how you got started in the work that you do today.
Thanks for having me, Mr. Jaxai. I want to extend my appreciation for you inviting me to speak on your prestigious podcast. So thanks for having me. I started in the field so I'm an educational advocate. I started in the field about 20 years ago as a special education teacher with the intentions of helping students with disabilities build academic skills, therefore, to have a better quality of life, whatever that looked like to them. But having the ability to read and write, I do believe is very important for a good quality of life. Those dreams were just dashed when um, the educational system was more focused on scores and students passing state tests. I think that was No Child Left Behind. So I thought, I'll become an administrator and I'll fix that as an administrator. And well, that didn't work out. Um, and I realized if I ever died and met my maker, he would be like, what did you do? You did nothing for people. So I decided I would become an advocate. And as is everything in the journey of life, the hard times, the good times, the things we struggle with, um, they really lead us to where we are today. And my degrees, the positions I had in education, allowed me to become a very effective advocate for families and children with disabilities. So here I am.
Mm-hmm. So was it like um was it like in your family? What like did you come from a family of educators or how did that come about?
That's a good question. I come from a very, very large Irish American family, so very large, you know. So there are some of my relatives and cousins are in education, others are in the medical field, and others are in the legal field. But I was very drawn to helping students with disabilities because in high school I had to volunteer and get some volunteer hours in order to graduate. And I went into a class of students predominantly with Down syndrome. And I worked with those students. And honestly, the first day I went in, I was like, I just have to do 13 or 15 hours of this, and then I'm out. And I really came to understand that these individuals with Down syndrome were really magnificent people. And their intellect was not a reflection of what they could really do.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of what roped me in.
Mm-hmm. What was it like working with students with Down syndrome?
As a teenager,
Uh, yeah, because you said you worked with them for a while, so I want to know like
right.
what your experience was like. Um,
So as a teenager, so you know how teenagers are. They have these perceptions in their head and they want to never stand out. So I would during lunch go and assist for my 45-minute lunch period uh, with these students. And what the teacher, his name was Ed McCarthy, who became a very good friend of mine. But what I realized was the students with Down syndrome had the same interest as every other teenager. They liked music, they liked to dance, they wanted to know what was going on. Um, they had dreams and hopes, and they had goals they wanted to achieve in their life. However, back then in the late 80s, we were isolating that population. Therefore, we as a society weren't really getting to know this magnificent group of individuals. I'm happy to say over the decades, that has changed, and we are embracing individuals with disabilities. If there's something visual we can see or not, as a society, we have become, we embrace them, we embrace those individuals, and we're starting to see who they are more for their strengths instead of their weaknesses. So I think that's beautiful.
Hmm. So, if I could get back to the next question that I have is what are you doing now or nowadays? Are you still an educational advocate, or is there more to it than that?
No, I'm still an educational advocate. I continue to support families and students uh, in the public school district. Of course, I primarily work with the parents. If the parents or parent feels that their child is not accessing the curriculum and the school is not doing anything or doing minimal to help their child close the gap or access the curriculum, and the school is not responding to the parent, that's how I support them. I come in and um, having been a special education teacher and an administrator, I know what evaluations should be conducted. I know how to interpret those scores, excuse me, and what services that child needs.
Hmm. So, because I remember talking to a parent and she was telling me that she has a son with dyslexia and how she's been in the IEP meetings and all that stuff. And, because oftentimes, when people sort of are assessing, a child with a certain disability, they always have this assumption of like, oh, your child's fine. Oh, your child's fine. No, they're not fine. They require accommodations for their needs. So that's what I kind of took away from that.
Yes, absolutely. That's absolutely accurate. And when we have, and this is, if anyone leaves today and I've offered them any insight, if their child is behind in reading by 4 months, they need to seek out appropriate instruction for that child. If your child is 4 or more months behind their class, that class is going to continue on with their reading acquisition skills, and your child will always be behind. It's not okay. And no, your child's not going to catch up without accommodations and reading and specialized reading instruction. But you get that through an IEP. So yes.
Mm-hmm. So what methods, tools, strategies do you use as an educational advocate to help students succeed in the classroom?
The primary tool I use is data. I want data. I want evaluations conducted, current evaluations conducted. I want teacher input. Teachers know if a student is behind. How much support does that student need from the teacher to complete assignments, understand what's going on? A teacher can also tell you if a student, excuse me, is behind. Um, I also want data from the parents. How does your child do with their homework? Do they struggle? Do they understand? Do you have to reteach the content? Those are my primary tools is data. And taking that data, we then can create an appropriate plan. Now, that sounds really simple, right?
Mm-hmm.
There are many school districts who will push back on that. They will say, we will try a school-based intervention first. We'll give your child who's a year and a half behind in reading a school-based reading intervention of reading help 3 times a week.
Mm-mm.
No, sir. Nope. So we need data.
Mm-hmm. I know you said a minute ago that you worked with parents. But what is it like working with parents in the educational sort of realm, I guess?
By the time a parent gets to me, they are usually frustrated and devastated. They have, on their own, tried to interact with the school district to get what their child needs. If a parent, sorry, if a parent is reaching out to me, they have exhausted all avenues on their own. Um, I, if a parent has come to me, they are ready to do what they have to do. They just need guidance. Parents don't know what they don't know,
Mm-hmm.
right? You don't know what to ask for your child. Many parents would like their child evaluated to see if they qualify for special education services. Little do they know, they just have to put it in writing.
Right.
Usually, they will go speak to the school psychologist or the school teacher or their child's teacher, and they will say, "Oh, we don't need to do that at this point." And parents are like, "I asked," and I always say, "Did you put it in writing?
Mm-hmm.
You have to submit that in writing." So parents don't know what they don't know. They try so hard and they mean so well. I do believe with the onset of artificial intelligence, I think that parents can utilize that tool to learn what they have to do. And I have had parents utilize artificial intelligence and then they come to me, and artificial intelligence still can't tell them everything. I don't know if it ever will, but artificial intelligence doesn't know everything it needs to know. The nuances, the nuances.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I think artificial intelligence is so dominant now, and people, there's some good and there's some bad.
Absolutely. I absolutely agree with you.
Mm-hmm. And my next question is, what have you learned in doing this kind of work as an educational advocate? Is there anything that you sort of take away from your time as an educational advocate?
Oh, absolutely. Um, it's the more I do it, the more I learn about students and even human nature. In the field of education, we really focus on a student's weaknesses. So, can you imagine every day walking into a building and we are just going to focus on your weakness? We're going to try to build that. Our students and members of society who have some kind of disability have so many amazing strengths that we need to start looking for their strengths more so than their weaknesses. No, you look at our neurodiverse population, our students with ADHD. They are brilliant minds. Their minds can
Mm-hmm.
do many things at once. And, they get dinged for not paying attention, not having your binders in order, not following the proper procedure for solving a math equation. Every now and again on social media, I'll see a post that says, "Another day has passed, and not once did I use PEMDAS." And, if you're a student with, ADHD, they can do amazing things once you get them outside of a room where they have to sit still and pay attention to one or two things at a time.
Mm-hmm. It's great that you mentioned that because I remember listening to a podcast episode and I listened to this person who has ADHD and how she couldn't focus or pay attention or do things that were distracting, um, and just kind of how she got it. Um, I know she said at one point that she got her diagnosis um, because her mother gave her an article and said, "Hey, you should read this," that kind of thing. I think she started noticing it when she was at an IKEA. She started to notice any sort of behaviors that she wouldn't otherwise have um she wouldn't otherwise have noticed. So yeah, that's what I took away from that episode. This sort of like where how she grew up in school, and so how teachers sort of saw her and like, oh, this person is distracting, when in fact she has a condition that sort of affects her the way she does. So what I'm
Mhm.
wondering is how
Agreed.
does sort of society, education in general, sort of view or cast people with ADHD?
My interpretation of what I read, because I haven't done any research on my own, but what I am reading and understanding is that there is more of an understanding of what it is, how it impacts people differently, how it impacts women or females so differently than males. Um, in many ways, this generation is kinder and more compassionate to those who have some struggles, and they're struggles. We all have struggles, um, but I do appreciate how this generation is more compassionate and kind and accommodating.
Hmm. And so how do you, to that end, how do you flip that around and address that sort of stigma and biases? Because we all have internal biases of our own. And so how do we sort of flip that into a more positive, or I guess I should say educational way for people to understand?
Well, in a classroom, teachers are charged with teaching students the curriculum. There's a
Hmm.
lot of pressure on teachers
Yeah.
to meet pacing guides and for their students to hit certain benchmarks. For some of our individuals diagnosed with ADHD, a classroom is not an ideal setting for them.
Hmm.
But there are so many wonderful educators who will let kids stand up at their desk, and not make them just sit. There are so many wonderful educators who will let them like go take a walk, come back. Um, anyone who has who is diagnosed with ADHD, they work really hard. We have to understand that they work very hard to focus and pay attention and not be distracting. Um, that also comes with maturity, but it's a lot for them.
Hmm. And finally, just to kind of wrap this up, what if, um, what do you, how does sort of your work and as an educational advocate sort of, you know, how can that sort of dedication to helping people with disabilities make a difference in people's lives?
So, as an educational advocate,
Hmm.
the difference I hope I'm making is that I intercede on their behalf and advocate that they are provided the interventions or classroom setting and to write goals that we know these amazing people can meet with the proper accommodations. You know, it's 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 like it's like asking someone, I can't even think of a good analogy, sorry. I tried. But with a proper accommodations and having an expectation that a student will reach a goal that they can obtain and access the curriculum and continue on. Because I do believe education is the key to success, whatever that looks like for you. And it allows for a good quality of life.
Hmm. Yeah, it's I'll think of an ex I got an example. You know that picture where there's kids standing at a fence and they're one of them shows like equality where one of them is
Yes.
standing
Yes.
equally on a
There you
box
go.
and the
Hmm.
other one is at different heights or whatever. That's what I was thinking of because that
Yes.
captures what you're talking about.
Right. Exactly. So if you put a box under one of the students, they can see over the fence.
Yeah.
Another kid doesn't even need anything. They can just see over the fence. Yes. Well done. Well done. Yes, exactly.
Yeah. All
High
righty.
five.
High five, virtual
High
high five.
five.
Yeah.
Virtual high five.
Yeah. All righty. Cool.